The steering's funny on this.
So that...
It is bloody terrible.
Hello everyone, welcome back. Firstly, I just want to thank everyone for your support on last week's video. To be brutally honest, I just put the video together while I'm recovering from a little stay in hospital, and normally we'd be reporting on the restorations of the Ingle Falcon and the Ellery and Glen Seaton AUs, and I haven't been able to obviously make a lot of progress of late, so thought I'd put together a video on the GT, and the interest in that has been mind-blowing. So I appreciate everyone's support. There's been a lot of information you guys have sent in. There's been people that worked for Tickford back in the day that have shared details about how these cars were all built. There's been people that used to service this exact car and been able to explain why some of the wear and tear items on this car are a little bit higher than average. So it's been really good from that standpoint. And it's also ignited the debate as far as whether these cars should be driven or hidden. And if you buy a GT, how should you treat it? So it's been a very interesting week. And one thing that's clear above all else is, even though we don't have an automotive manufacturing, I guess that part of Australia has now died, or that era's gone. It's really cool to know that the passion still exists. And there's so many people that are still as passionate for these cars as they were back when they were getting made here. We've also got a video that we've uncovered of Dick Johnson driving an EBGT and John Harvey driving Holden's equivalent. And then they switch over and they put Dick in the Holden and John in the Ford. And you'll see some of the feedback that comes through. If that happened today, it would be an absolute legal minefield, some of the stuff that they said about the competitor products. So I'll share that with you in this video as well, and that'll bring you up to speed. So there's been a ton of information come in the last week or so as a result of last week's video. Now, there was comments in that we're still working through, but one of them that stands out in my mind is there was a guy that used to work at Jeff Wignall Ford. Now, I said in last week's video that we thought the car was ordered through Jeff Wignall's. Turns out that it was, and the guy that commented used to work there, and he said he remembers servicing this car, or what he believes to be this car. Now, the reason it stands out in his mind is he said at the time the car was being used more as a work car. So it was loaded up with tools, and really the guy that owned it probably needed a work ute as opposed to a GT, but each to their own. So I used that information and thought, well, I'll have a bit of a look in the boot and just see what it looks like, just to work out if it is the car or not. And if I get my torch, and you can see here, there's a heck of a lot of wear and tear, all on the inside of the boot lining, all the way along the back. So you can see it's certainly had a pretty rugged life as far as that goes. Now, one other thing that was, I guess, makes it almost rock solid that information is correct is he said that the car had personalised plates on it, and from memory it carried the EBGT I guess numbers or letters, and then there were numbers after it. So if we come down to the front of the car, now obviously that plate's long gone, but if I turn the torch on again, you can see there that it does show that there were personalised plates carrying EBGT on it at some point. So it's pretty cool just through the video that it still lives on in this guy's mind, and it's reconnected him with the car all these years on. Now, there's also been some information roll through in regard to the writing that was on the inside of the rear bar. And Sean, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the last name, I'll get it wrong, but you can see it there. Now, the general consensus around that, there's a lot of guys that have contacted us and said that they've got the same name on their car through Tickford. So obviously he worked there. There was even a LinkedIn profile that was shared with us for somebody that's over in America. That's same name, works for the Ford Motor Company. Not too sure if it's the same person or not. But the date which has been picked up on, the date on the writing is well after this car was produced. So about a year or so after. So given that we've got a boot full of tools and a few other things going on, we seem to think that it's relative to the tow bar being installed to the car, and whether that had to go back to the dealership to be done, and whether it had to be modified to suit the GT rear bar. Now that I don't know the answer to. Again, you guys will have more idea than what I do, but you can have a look in under here. It does look like it's all been put together out of bits of flat. That's just a measurement that's been written across the top where it's all been bolted to the floor. But it does look like it's not something I'd say is factory made, like a Heyman Reese setup or anything like that. But again, I'm open to your feedback on that. One other thing that was mentioned, again through somebody that works at Tickford, they asked if the car still had its original builder sticker, which I had no idea even existed. Now it sits right up, if I get the camera under there, it sits right up under there. Now I can't get the camera in there to show you, but I'll get a photo of it. Now that's the original builder sticker, which is signed and dated. And again, just another little bit of information we've been able to find out thanks to you guys. So just before we roll into the footage of Dick Johnson and John Harvey driving these cars in the mid-1990s, I just want to show you the passenger side of the car. Now we did have some feedback last week suggesting that the car's not that bad and they should be just driven, but I just wanted to show you the passenger side because it is a lot worse than the driver's side. To give you an idea, that's a chunk of body filler that's fallen out on the underside of the car where it's been repaired. So she has had a bit of a torrid life, and it all is on the passenger side of the car. Now, without boring you with the details, you can see there that whole section is all filler and it's ready to crack out and fall out. You could hook your nail under that and pull that out. It won't show up on camera, but the whole rear quarter panel is really wrinkled. It really needs to be repaired and repaired properly. Door handles, you can see they're an absolute mile out of being the right colour. And this whole side of the car has been resprayed at some stage. There's a heap of damage on the passenger side door. And then when you work your way around the car, it's all a fairly similar story. You can see the GT vents, all the paint's coming off. And there's, it doesn't just come off in small sections, it's coming off in big chunks. So it's, I don't want to lose the character and the history of the car, but at the same time, really want it to have it that it's presentable and, you know, representative of what was a really cool era of these cars and the return of the GT after 25 years. So to finish off this week's video, this was shot back in the mid-90s when the EBGT was released. And it's got Dick Johnson and John Harvey driving their respective brands, but at the same time they then switch and go into the competitor product. Now some of the feedback they both gave the cars, especially Dick Johnson, who was quite critical of the Holden, you just can't imagine that happening these days. And it does make you really wish that this era still existed. You know, the cars were made here, everyone could talk openly and honestly. Obviously, you know, the people are going to be biased toward their brand or sponsorship, but it really was a great era. And if that happened today, what you're about to see, I'm sure there'd be legal letters a mile long firing across desks for the next year. So I hope you enjoy this. This is was dug up, and it's just a really cool piece of Australian motoring history. I'll speak to you soon.
Holden has joined the V8 battle with a vengeance. It released today the new $55,000 Holden GTS.
I've driven the Holdens before, and these particular cars, the Falcon GT, in my mind, is the best sports performance car of its kind.
Well, the cars may have changed, but the sentiment hasn't. In the red corner, Ford man and racing hero Dick Johnson.
These particular vehicles were virtually built, I think, to attract the gentleman that would have loved to have had a GT Falcon back in the early days and now has the position to be able to afford it.
And in the blue corner, John Harvey, former racing driver and Holden PR man. Why is it the best?
Well, I guess it's probably the most technically advanced Holden that Holden Special Vehicles have produced thus far.
Well, Dick, here she is, the new baby. What's so good about it?
Well, basically the aesthetics of the car, which is the exterior, has been done in a wind tunnel.
Performance-wise, they have the same output, 200 kilowatts, so there shouldn't be too much difference there. They have a slightly wider tyre and wheel combination. in terms of cornering performance, I guess Dick and I could probably explore that to the limit, but the average person
John, the
wouldn't.
bottom line, John, is yours better?
Oh, I think so, but it's a little bit early to say.
So what happens when a biased Holden man gets to test drive a new Ford and a Ford icon roughs it in a Holden? So, Dick, the Ford man inside the Holden, are you feeling comfortable?
Well, you know, the amount of leg room that one has, and like, I'm a reasonable sized person and I like sitting back a long way in the seat, and the Falcon tends to have a little more leg room down below here where I can stick my feet.
Dick gave Holden's V8 the thumbs down when it came to steering.
The steering's funny on this.
So that...
It is bloody terrible.
Meanwhile, Holden man John Harvey was doing his best to stay polite about the Ford. He said the Holden wasn't basically in the same league.
Oh, I think saying that we're not in the same league is probably going a little bit too far.
He thought that the Holden was a wimp's car.
No, I wouldn't say that. No question that it is a wimp's car. I think the Ford certainly, with its exterior styling, says "look at me," whereas the Holden is obviously more subtle.
Automatics is not the sort of car that I like driving because you haven't got the complete control that you normally have with a manual car.
I think the Holden's handling and ride quality is better. In fact, much better.
When you said you haven't got complete control, I'm assuming that you do have some control at this point.
Well, yeah, I got complete control at the moment. I sincerely hope I have, otherwise we're in a fair bit of trouble.
How would you rate the Holden out of 10?
I would say probably a 6.5.
John, the moment of truth, how would you rate the Ford?
Out of 10, I'd give it 7, maybe 7.5.
Very generous, considering that Dick gave the Holden 6, and when he was feeling a little bit generous, he said 6.5.
6.5? He's got to be joking. I mean, I think Dick's gone a bit loopy in his old age. 6.5? I mean, the Commodore's got to be at least 8.
And so we return where this story began. John motored home in his Holden, and Dick's sponsors could rest easy. He was back in his Ford and still doing wheelies.